Hey everybody, it's Safi and Marco Dish Out on Movies, the only movie review show on YouTube to review movies in terms of food. It's just Marco here once again, and I am going to try to get through this video without doing all the coughing that I did yesterday. And see, this is what I mean. This is why mostly that I wasn't doing any videos. Well, there you go. It's just because of that, it's really tough to do videos when it's like that. But anyways, I am here to now talk about the top 10 best old movies. And it's tough because there's a lot of other movies to talk about regardless of them being in the top 10. And I'm going to try to get through them really fast. I'm going to be a speed runner like you've never seen. It's just I like to give every movie the time and attention that they deserve, because I know that a lot of them I won't ever review them. Or maybe I'll have to review them in the future, and so it's tough to decide. Really I should probably write a script out for some of these videos, but I don't like sticking to scripts either. Well, anyways, The Secret Life of Jeffrey Dahmer. This movie was one of the best serial killer movies I've ever seen. And I promise that was not a Freudian slip. It's just that, this sickness kind of makes you a little wonky with words and stuff. And so it really felt like a raw Texas Chainsaw type of movie. It was very scary, and it felt like a video game. It was really, really good and creepy. The guy who played Jeffrey Dahmer, he had a transformative performance. Like the whole movie, he's just constantly changing, just like the character. And it's so cool to see that level of transformation on screen, because honestly it was, to me, I would consider it up there with Oscar-worthy performances. She-Devil was a very fun movie. It's a really goofy, 1950s movie. It was a recommendation, and it definitely was one of the best recommendations of the year because it was so funny, and it was so fun, and it was so, I don't know, it's just, bad movies nowadays, they're not fun. Bad movies from back then, they were really, really fun to watch. Which is why, of course, you have so many movies that are called B movies. Those are movies that are bad, but they're fun, so who cares? And then, okay, those aren't really, no. Kiss of the Vampire was pretty damn good. That had the best Hammer horror movie score of all time, so just for the music, it's worth it. This felt like a reboot to the Hammer Dracula series, and to me, I would really like to see a whole series based around the Kiss of the Vampire mythology, rather than just doing the 1000th Dracula movie. Make a sequel to this, because this was badass. At the end of this movie, how did they defeat the bad guys? They do a fucking dark magic ritual, and they summon every vampire bat in the world to come and kill all these vampires, this vampire cult. And so it's basically evil destroying evil. And it was probably one of the coolest scenes, one of the coolest payoffs in movie history. I mean, it was so unexpected, and just thinking about, what did people think back then in the theaters? This would have been epic to see in the theaters when it happened, because it is kind of intense. They used real bats, and the actors were not prepared for it, and there were a lot of fake bats as well, but it was phenomenal. It was just so, they'd never be able to do anything like that nowadays. They'd never be able to, they'd have some sort of a lawsuit or something, or some crybaby actor crying on Twitter about it, Wicked Stepmother was a fun, bad movie. Manos, The Hands of Fate, this was a really fun, funny, good, bad movie. What happened with this one was I was watching a YouTube channel, which I don't really watch very much anymore because he's gotten too political, but comic artist Pro Secrets, he did a live stream where him and his friends did a commentary over this movie, and I was supposed to go to bed, but I was so just enthralled by this hilarious commentary, and it was so hilarious, and it's like, what the hell is this movie? It was so funny. Route 666, this was a very fun movie that reminded me of, what if you made Resident Evil, the arcade game, a movie? There were some really good ideas in this movie. There were some really good kills, and I definitely love to see a sequel to this movie, or maybe even a remake of this one with the criticisms that I talked about in the review. Fix a couple of things. La La Land is a movie I'll talk about in the review video of the other movies of 2022. I watched this movie on Christmas. It was fun. The Apartment, that was a pretty good movie, but kind of meh. It seems kind of a little overrated, but I still like it. Willard was an okay movie. I mean, it was okay. It just felt very simple. It felt like it could have been a lot better at the end. It was just okay. Texas Chainsaw 3D. This was so much better than I expected. I had so much fun with this movie. I definitely wish that they had done some sequels. And so I would say, even though this was bad, I did enjoy it a lot. And I wish that I had seen it in theaters when it originally came out, because I just, that was back when I stuck with the programming. And I said, oh, I'm not seeing any of those in theaters because other people said they're bad. And, that's just the wrong thing to do in regards to movies. Leatherface, that was a fun movie, kinda. I mean, it had some really good kills, and there's this part at the end where, it has this fantastic bloody kill with Leatherface. But it is pretty bad. I mean, it's not a very good movie. And then, let's see, those weren't very good. Bad Sister. Obviously, I talked about how the ending of this movie was just iconic. I mean, you have this fat character, and he hooks up with the leading actress in the film at the end of the movie, and they're making a chocolate cake together, and it's like, see, they never would have done that nowadays. They think that they're so PC nowadays, and they think that they're so, progressive, but they never would have done this nowadays. They never would have done that for that type of character. And so, I gotta give this movie major props. I mean, you talk about, I don't know what example, because there was something where I wanted to reference that ending, but, it's perfect. It's like, you'd never see that in a movie nowadays. You'd never see that unless maybe it was an ugly-ass fat woman. You'd never see this type of ending. But the rest of the movie is pretty fun. I mean, it's a lot like a TV episode of an ongoing series about a family, and to me, I could have watched a whole show about this family and Bad Sister. Psycho Goreman, this was another really fantastic fan recommendation. I had so much fun with this movie. It had great effects. It was very creative. It was very fun. And it was definitely something that I wish that I'd have watched when it came out. Because when it came out, for some reason, I just thought, is this a good... Like, I didn't know what it was. I kind of had the impression that it was like a straightforward, serious movie. I didn't know that it was like this fun comedy type of thing. Like, it's so good. It's so fun. I definitely watch it again, and I can't wait for the sequel if they make one. Fateful Findings, wow. That was a really fun, funny, good, bad movie. My Soul to Take, that one was interesting, and I still haven't talked about that, but that was another one where I had seen it before I saw it. In fact, a majority of the things that happen in the movie are things that I came up with for what I wanted to be the Nightmare on Elm Street sequel trilogy, the first movie. Like, a majority of the things in the movie. Like, it's pretty interesting. And so that's why I said, like, this movie, I think there should be a sequel. And instead of making a new Nightmare movie, you could just make a series out of this and just fix it, because I thought the first movie, for all of its problems, it had potential. Intruder was a fantastic, fun 80s slasher movie. I was so shocked that I hadn't heard about this movie very much, because to me, I'd say that this is one of the top 5 slashers of all time. It had all the elements of a good slasher without feeling too cliche. Circle of Two, this one was a very good movie, and it's another forbidden relationship movie, and it was definitely the best one that I had seen from last year. And you'd have these fantastic performances. It's a very tragic movie, and the ending in this movie is really, really sad, because they not only don't get together, but there's this whole like sad like thing at the end where they look at each other, and it's terrible. And it's like, see, this is how Summer of 42 should have been done, more so. Like, the thing is, too, is that they didn't even really have, like, a romance. Like, these people, they weren't ever going to get together. It's just the false impression that they were going to get together. And so it leads to some conflicts and things. I would highly recommend it, though. It was a fantastic movie. Marty was good. Storm Center was okay. It was kind of disappointing. Birth of a Nation was a fantastic film because it was in the perspective of the bad guys. And I really wish that there were more movies that were in the perspective of a villain. Because the whole movie, I was thinking, like, okay, is this really going to be like a racist movie? And it's not. It's a villain's memoir. Like, it would be like saying that, like if a serial killer wrote a memoir, like it would be saying, like, ooh, this movie is a bad... It's like, no, it's a different perspective, and so you have to keep that in mind when you watch it. You can't just pretend like this was meant to harm people, because it wasn't. Like, yeah, people misconstrued it, and they turned it into something that harmed people by using it as like a recruiting video for other racists. But the movie itself is not a racist movie. The people who made the movie were not racist. And I personally, I thought it was an extremely impressive movie in terms of the technical side of things. Because I thought, I don't know how, I wouldn't know how to do what they did in this movie. And like, they had thousands and thousands of people on screen at the same time. And it's like, the guy who made this movie, he's He's an artiste. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, that was a really great movie. I think that's a very underrated movie in the series. It definitely, like, people don't give that movie enough credit. Cropsy was a pretty good documentary. Moon was a pretty good movie. The problem with Moon is that it was a masterpiece, but it was depressing. And it was way too depressing. It's so dark. It's hard to watch for me. Like, the music is dark. Everything about the movie is dark. The thing that I love about the movie, though, is that this is one of those movies where it's basically like one actor the whole movie, and it's just him. And it's like, that it just shows, like, you can do anything pretty much, and as long as the story works. And I really think I feel sad that I can't, like, put this movie at, like, number one, but it's just too depressing, and so that really hurts the movie. Color Me Kubrick. This was a very funny movie about this guy who pretended he went around pretending that he was Stanley Kubrick so that he could get sexual favors and get free drinks and get free hotel rooms and just get free stuff. And to me, I would say that this movie was extremely fun as a Stanley Kubrick fan, because you see all the little references to his movies. You see all the little nods. It's very much a movie that was made to be a tribute to Stanley Kubrick. And John Malkovich, he does such an incredible job in this movie. His performance it's so good. But it is a movie that wears on you a little bit, because I watched this movie like 10 times, and then I was like, I don't want to ever watch this again. Or at least not for a long time, just because I'm so worn out from this movie. And then Gravy was awesome. I mean, this was how you do a throwback horror movie. This is how you do a movie that calls back to exploitation films like Last House on the Left. It was so funny, it was so smart, and it's so underrated. It is a little cutesy in terms of the dialogue, but I love this movie personally. Barabbas was pretty good, although I didn't like the messaging, which basically the messaging is, you should kill yourself, or you should die, and you should be glad that you die because you're sacrificing yourself for religion. And to me, like, that's a terrible message to send to children, because the movie kind of shows the exact opposite throughout the movie. Like, it's kind of like this warped, cultish, to me it was like a pagan version of the story. It was like just all about sacrificing yourself, and it was terrible in terms of messaging. But it was an epic movie, and it was really an adventure. Like, there's so many moments in the movie where you could pause it and it could be a painting. Next up, Wood Chipper Massacre. This movie was extremely fun and smart, because this is a person, he only had $400, and he made this movie, and he did a damn good job making this movie. He did the best job anyone could ever do with $400. And there's some genuine suspense in this movie. There's some genuine Hitchcockian moments. This family, they kill people on accident. And it's funny because in the last 20 minutes of the movie, they're not worried about having killed people anymore. They're worried more about how they have to clean up the yard, because they promised that they would have the yard mowed and cleaned up by the end of the weekend. And so that's what they're doing in the last 20 minutes. And people have used that as a criticism against the movie. I think it's a strong point, because it's like, see, this is like totally Hitchcock, to where, you committed these murders, you have these bodies that you disposed of, but all you have to worry about now is cleaning up the fucking grass in the yard. Midnight Cowboy was good. Stage Door was very good, although it was it was a little aimless at certain points, but it was still really good. Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, that was a masterpiece, pretty much. Topkapi, this is a movie that I watched because Safi and I played a game of Trivial Pursuit, and I was like, who the fuck is this? Because they were talking about who won Best Supporting Actor, and it was the guy from this movie, the guy with the mustache in Topkapi. And I was like, why the hell did he win Best Supporting Actor? And then I saw the movie, and I was like, oh shit, I can see why he won Best Actor. This movie was a masterpiece. I mean, it was really a 10 out of 10, 5 out of 5, A+ movie until the ending. The ending of this movie was stupid, and it was rushed, and it felt like I predicted the ending before it even happened. Like, I was like, oh, that's gonna happen, and then it happened, and I was like, ugh, really? Because the whole movie, it's like kind of priding itself on doing the unexpected, and then at the very end they do the thing that's expected, and I was disappointed. However, I'd still watch this movie again. I'd highly recommend it. It's so good. It's a movie I'd like to review in the future, for sure. It's a heist movie, and it's sort of like, what if Mission Impossible was an Oscar contender? Because I definitely would have given Topkapi an Oscar, but I wouldn't give any of the Mission Impossibles an Oscar. So, and then My Fair Lady I really liked. I thought, even though I ragged on it in the review, for sure, it was a very positive movie, and it was a masterpiece, and it was something that you could just have fun and turn your brain off and just enjoy these fantastic actors, the main two people in this movie. The music was pretty good. There were a couple of annoying musical parts, though, but I don't care. Like, I had too much fun with it. It was so good in like a comforting type of way. I mean, you just look at the cover, this pink cover, and you just feel like you're in good hands. So number 12, because I'm getting very close to the top 10. Number 12 is Duel in the Sun. I know I acted like this movie would be number 1 on the list when I reviewed it, and I'm sorry about that. I have this thing with my mouse where the batteries like screw up and they like fall out and they twist around, and so I can't move the mouse around properly, and I have to bang it down until the mouse goes back to normal. There we go. But Duel in the Sun, as I talked about in my review, this is a very entertaining, good, bad movie in a way, because you can just tell the script for this movie is non-existent. It's a disaster. it starts off with a very promising story about who is this woman going to choose. Is she going to choose the good guy, or is she going to choose the bad guy? And of course, the bad guy is played by Gregory Peck, and he gives one of the best performances of all time. Is the bad guy in this movie. He is so good playing a bad guy, even more so than he is playing a good one. And Jennifer Jones, obviously, she gives one of the best performances ever as well. You know, she is clearly like a star. The problem is the behind the scenes stuff. You know, and I hate to bring this stuff up because you know, I am all about separating the art from the artist. But it was tough after learning what happened with the people who made this movie. It was a little difficult. You know, that's the thing, is that I'm not saying that it's not difficult to separate the art from the artist. But, you know, you have to do it just to be fair. And, you know, if the movie's good, the movie's good. Well, you know, Jennifer Jones, and this is all factual, by the way. This is not opinionated or anything. She was married to this actor, and she had an affair with the producer of Duel in the Sun, and he was basically grooming her and making all these movies just for her, and he was kind of like, you know, basically, just as I said. And then she divorced her husband, left him for the producer, and then the producer and her, they got married and had children, and so the actor who she divorced, you know, he was devastated. His acting career never went anywhere again, and then he eventually killed himself, you know, because of what they did to him. And so I admit, like that came into play when I ranked this movie. I really don't like that at all. I think it's disgraceful, and I think you know, the gross thing about this movie is that that's what this movie's kind of about. Like, if you look at it that way, it's about the producer, the bad guy, taking this woman away from the good guy, who is Joseph Cotton in the movie. And so it's pretty gross to me. Like, it's just really gross. And then, of course, Jennifer Jones, one of her own children, killed themselves later on in life. And so, you know, lots of weirdness around this character here. You know, she had a very weird kind of... I don't even think there's been like a biography about her. You know, it's sad because it feels like she had so much potential as an actress, and it feels like her career was kind of like ruined by this whole evil thing that she did by having an affair with that producer, and then ruining her husband's life. And then number 11, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? And I promised I would have been faster, but I was actually slower this video. Whoops. See, that's what happens when I'm told that I have to be faster. I'm like, yeah, okay. Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? This movie was a masterpiece as well. The dialogue in this movie was perfection. It was very influential in terms of literally all this movie is four people sitting around talking. That's all it is. And they managed to just do anything and everything possible to make it interesting. And it's basically, and I hate to spoil the movie, it's basically all about a couple who are the biggest troll couple in the universe. And they're a really creepy, toxic, abusive couple. and they like to play these games where they bring young couples over and they troll them, and they do all these fucking terrible things. Like there's this part where the main character, he comes up with a gun and he points it right at his wife, and then he presses the trigger, and of course it's like a umbrella or something. It's really like intense, this movie, because you don't know what's real and what isn't. So number 10 was Stagecoach. This is a movie that I watched because I wanted to watch a John Ford movie after watching The Fabelmans. This is my first ever John Ford movie, and I really think that it is an undeniable masterpiece. It's one of those movies where it's kind of like Goodfellas, where I don't think that Goodfellas is the most rewatchable movie, and it's not one of my favorite movies, but it's a movie where you just can't deny that it's perfect. And that's what this movie is to me. It's all about this group of people, different characters in the Wild West, and they have to travel across Apache land in order to get to the nearest town in a stagecoach. And the reason why this movie is good is because you get to know the characters. Like, the majority of this movie, like 90% of it, is just you getting to know these 9 characters. And when you look at all the characters, their pictures after watching the movie, you know who every single character in the movie is. Even though you might not know their names, you know who all the characters in this movie are. I mean, this movie is definitely one of the greatest movies of all time. It's just totally, like, the prime example of what a movie should be. There's surprises, there's great plot twists, there's the hero, and he's not told that he's a toxic man, and that he should apologize to Whammon. You know, like, this is a movie that it destroys the movies that come out in 2022. Like, honestly, if you want to know the depressing truth about movies nowadays, is that I don't even think that the number I think that the number 43rd movie and below that is where you put the 2022 movies. So there's 43 out of 86 movies, about half the list, that I think are better than the movies that came out last year. I mean, that's pretty bad. Wouldn't you say it like that? It just shows. And this is, of course, John Wayne's, I think, his first movie. And he did a fantastic job. And, you know, as you guys know, I don't like John Wayne in any way, shape, or form. But after this movie, I do. So that should tell you something about how good this movie is. It is definitely one of the best movies ever. For sure. Number 9 is The Whereabouts of Jenny. Now, this is a movie it's a TV movie. It's a made-for-TV movie starring Al Bundy from Married with Children. And to call this movie as a masterpiece is a disservice to masterpieces. Like, it's just perfect. Like, I watched this movie like 12,000 times this year. It's all about where suddenly his wife and his daughter go missing, and it turns out that she's divorcing him, and she's basically stealing away his daughter. And so he's got to try to find her while she's in witness protection. because her newest boyfriend, he's a snitch, and so he's got to go to these great lengths to find her, and it turns into this really like intense movie where like it's kind of like an expose on the government and their unfairness to men in these types of cases, divorce cases, because it's basically like they're holding his child hostage, and they won't let him see her, and they're making all these demands to him of like, oh, you're gonna help us with this and you're gonna help us with that. It's like the mafia or something, asking for favors and then having to do favors yourself. Like, that's what it was like. And I really thought this movie's extremely underrated. It definitely is a movie that's worth being in the top 10 list. Number 8 is Animal House. This movie is an undeniable masterpiece. Somehow you feel nostalgia for a time period that you've never been in, and really the best thing about this movie is that there's really no plot, and there's really no main character who you can root for, but somehow you're rooting for these really unlikable characters, this fraternity who, they're pretty bad. Like, they do some pretty terrible things sometimes, but you still want to watch them. You still want to see them succeed. And I don't know. It was just, this is one of those movies where, it was so funny. It was so magical that, it's perfect. It's like you just can't deny it. Like, this movie, so many people nowadays, they say that this movie's overrated. They don't even give this movie any respect. And I really think that people need to take another look, because there's so many other movies that you could say are overrated in comparison to this. I mean, just in terms of 2022 movies, wow. Like, almost every movie from that whole year is overrated. Even the best movie of the year, Top Gun Maverick, spoiler alert, that movie's heavily overrated. But a movie like Animal House, nowadays especially, I think it's underrated, because they never make Animal House nowadays. Number 7 is Hell's House. This is a phenomenal, one of the best movies ever made. It's all about a teenager who kind of looks like Tom Holland, and he is sent to a reform school, and it's basically like an expose on these prisons for teenagers, and it's really like a masterpiece. I mean, I'm looking at Letterboxd, I'm looking at all these idiots who gave it like 2 out of 5, 2.5 out of 5. They don't know what they're talking about, okay? This movie is perfect because it's all based around a strong friendship. The main thing of this movie is that this kid goes there, he gets screwed over and framed, and he goes into this reform school, and he makes a friend, and that friendship is like the center point of the movie. And nowadays you never see any friendship in movies between men anyways, because whenever there's two men that are friends in a movie, well, they always make them gay for each other. Well, not in Hell's House. And there's some really disturbing things that happen in this movie. In particular, and I'm looking at my old review that I wrote on there, there was a scene where these kids are forced to sit there and stare at the wall. And they're all just sitting there staring into space, and they're not allowed to go to sleep. And there's this one kid who actually dies, And I guess that happened for real. Like the conditions at these places, it's pretty bad. And they looked like zombies. And to me, I would say that, these were the first zombies in a film. Like, forget about White Zombie, forget about Night of the Living Dead. The first zombies were in Hell's House. These kids sitting there staring into space. And so this movie's perfect. I'd highly recommend it. I'd definitely watch it again. Number 6 is Eye of the Devil. You guys know that this isn't a movie. It's a spell. However, the cinematography with these sweeping camera movements, the way the movie looks, everything, the setting, this castle that kind of, it's kind of like a castle that looks like it's floating in the sky. This is a very disturbing, horrifying movie because you can just see the things that were going on behind the scenes, and it kind of makes the movie a lot scarier than it would be if you just took it for what it was. That's the thing, is that the real life stuff actually elevates this movie even more, and the characters are perfect. There are some really, this is probably one of the best spells that I've ever seen, because it's perfect suspense. It's like a thriller, it's like a horror, and it's a really creepy movie. Because you just know that, that this happened for real, and you know that these types of characters, they existed, and they still exist, and you could just imagine, this is what goes on Epstein Island, the stuff that happens in this movie. So, number 5 is Funland. And no, I'm not joking at all. This movie is one of the best movies I've ever seen. It's all about this clown who works at a carnival, not a carnival, an amusement park. And basically, the mob takes over the park, and then they fire him, and they ruin the park. This evil mob, they're gonna develop it, and they're gonna ruin it and everything, they like to do in real life. And this clown says, "Oh, really? Well, I'm not gonna put up with that shit." And it's basically like the Joker at an amusement park. This movie is just, it's flawless. It's not really so much as a horror movie, because it was a little disappointing in terms of it only has 1 or 2 kills in the whole movie, and the clown never kills anyone, or he almost does, kinda. It's really more of a satire. It's a really smart satire on 1980s amusement park stuff. I don't know how to describe it. It's perfect. But at the same time, it really does have some creepy, haunting moments. And I think that the key thing about this movie is that it's a character that you root for. This Bruce Berger character, you really want him to succeed, and you want him to take down this mob of gangsters who have taken over this park and ruined it like they do in real life. And he succeeds. And the greatest part of this movie is at the end, he succeeds, and it's kind of like this Twilight Zone scenario. And the weird part is that even though he won, that's when the movie really feels like a horror movie, because you feel like the story isn't resolved, and this character, he is like a ticking time bomb, and he's gonna do something bad at some point, and he was already doing bad things. And so I'm going to watch this movie forever. Like this, it's perfect. Number 4 is The Dream Team. You want to talk about perfect movies. This is it. This movie is the perfect blend of comedy and drama. It's all about this group of people who are at an asylum, and their psychiatrist, he wants to take them to a baseball game as therapy. And so he takes them into the city, but then their therapist gets knocked out and attacked, and he gets taken to the hospital, and the patients are basically running around the city doing who knows what, getting into all this trouble. And once again, what's great about this movie is that you have these characters that you root for, and these are characters who you want to succeed, and you really feel for these characters. You see that, even though they have mental illnesses, they're still people, and the illnesses aren't going to stop them from saving the day. And so I really thought this was a positive movie. It was a very good movie. I mean, there was this one scene with Christopher Lloyd where he sees his family for the first time in like 10 years. And it was a very, very powerful scene. Because you think about, oh wow, you never even think about this in real life. And, they show that in this movie. And it was really good. Number 3 is The Night of the Hunter. This movie is definitely a masterpiece. I mean, I don't know who would fight against that. It's a terrifying, suspenseful movie about 2 kids who have to fight against this terrifying villain in Robert Mitchum. And basically he has come to these kids, and he's pretending that he's going to be their stepfather because their father, he robbed a bank, and then he gave the kids money and told them to hide it. And then the father stayed in prison for a while with Robert Mitchum, and so Robert Mitchum found out. And this movie, it might be one of the best movies ever made. Like, it really is that good. It's indescribably good. Almost every single shot of the movie is like a painting. The villain is one of the best villains, and probably he might be the best villain in movie history. The music is perfect. I mean, this is how movies are made. Like, this is a magical movie, and I was even just watching the behind the scenes of this movie, and you can just tell the difference in, like, the crop of people who made movies back then, the professionalism, they all cared about making a movie, making a good movie, versus nowadays, where it's like, everyone has their own little motives, and they really don't care about making movies. They don't care about making good movies, and you can tell the difference. Just look at Night of the Hunter, behind the scenes. There's a whole, 2-hour thing where it is just behind the scenes footage. Look at that, and then look at the behind the scenes for Uncharted with Tom Holland, and that's all you'll need to know. Number 2 is The Portrait of Jenny with Jennifer Jones. This movie is definitely one of the best movies ever made as well. It's a romance movie. This is how romance should be done. It's a ghost story crossed over with a romance movie. And it's really perfect because it's basically all about creating art. It's really not about romance. It's about creating art and how the romance kind of helps the art. And so this movie is just perfection. Like, I don't even know what to say. Like, it just, from beginning to end, it is a powerhouse. This is definitely Best Picture worthy. It might be one of my favorite movies ever made. It's indescribable. Like, it's really like there's really no words to describe it that can do it justice. It is pure magic from beginning to end. And I don't know. I don't know what to say. I don't even know what to say. So that should tell you guys how good the movie is. Number one. Now I want you guys to make a guess. And no, it is not going to be fucking The Room. Because I haven't talked about that yet. And no, that was okay. It wasn't the best, though. The number one movie, old movie, for me, 2022, is Elmer Gantry. Now, this movie was like 3 hours long, and I wanted to point that out because nowadays, they make 3-hour movies just for kicks. There's really no reason they should be making 3-hour movies. This movie, I could have watched it for like 20 hours, and I wouldn't have cared. It is a masterpiece from beginning to end. The music is perfect, and most of the songs, like most of the highlight, the highlight music pieces of the movie, are just people singing a cappella. And so you have that as well. And, just thinking about, I can automatically think about, scenes just pop up in my head as soon as I talk about this movie. It's basically the story of what if they did Better Call Saul, but what if they did it good? Like, it really felt like the writers of Better Call Saul saw this movie and then thought, no, we are not doing that. We are going to purposefully do everything the opposite way that would have been done in this movie. Because it's all about this con man, or this character who turns into a con man, and he sort of takes advantage of all these idiots who like revivalism and like, these carnival tent sermons. And, I'm not saying all of them are idiots, but, he knew that this audience of people, that they're so gullible, they don't go to church, they do shitty things, and then they want to feel good about themselves, so they go to these stupid revival meetings. And he knew that, like, he could take advantage of these idiots and preach to them. And then, of course, he's trying to do it so he can hook up with this mega revival nut job woman named Sharon. And basically he changes, and throughout the movie he goes from being a con man to becoming a man. And he all the things that you'd expect him to do, like with Jimmy McGill and Better Call Saul, he doesn't do them. He does the opposite. And so there's this whole segment of the movie where this woman whose life he destroyed to the point of where he basically, she's a prostitute now. Her life is terrible. Well, she wants to get her revenge, and she tries to do this whole sex blackmail thing, and he's changed so much that it doesn't work. and he's rejecting her, and he's like, I'm not going to just do that anymore. I'm not going to do the things that I used to do, and he changes. And so this movie, at the heart of it, it's really all about one character who changes the whole movie. He goes from A to C by the end of the movie. And, the whole movie he's preaching, and he's preaching, and he's basically just riling up these idiots. Like, there's this one really intense part where this guy starts barking like a dog. And it's just so creepy, because you can see, like, in real life, it's like a cult. This whole thing, it's like a cult of idiots. And at the end of the movie, Sharon's like, where have you been? Will you please preach at this meeting? And he says, no, I'm not going to preach at this stupid revivalism meeting, because I'm not a certified priest, and I have no right to be doing that. And he's changed it, and so he's decided by the end of the movie, no matter all the things that have happened, he's not going to take advantage of people anymore. He's not going to do what's expected. And it's a masterpiece. It might be like in the top 5 movies of all time. There's some great moments of comedy. There's just everything you could want is in this movie. But most importantly, the ending. The ending of the movie is even better, because he basically states what I just talked about for the past 10 minutes, to where he just directly tells these main characters, no, I've changed. And he leaves. He literally, like, fucking leaves the movie. And he's like, no, fuck you guys. You see what just happened here? This whole fucking place burned down because you guys are so busy worrying about this stupid... because the thing is that these people, they could all just go to church on Sunday and they would be fine. But instead they're at this weird place, and it's like this cult, and it's like Jim Jonestown fucking place. And the place burns down, and somebody or multiple people die. And he's like, see, this is what happens. And he's like, I'm not going to be a part of this crap anymore. And the creepiest part is that his love interest dies. And the only thing that they can find of her is her Bible. And so it's so interesting and kind of like symbolic and kind of, something you could talk about. Like, they are not able to find her remains, but they do find her Bible. And so he takes that with him. And, as soon as I saw this movie, I immediately knew it was going to be definitely like one of the best of the year. Clearly, like it, I'm not anti-religion. I'm not pro-religion. That's not what this movie's about. This movie is just a great story. You don't have to be anti-religion to like this movie. You don't have to be pro-religion to like this movie. That's another thing that's great about it, because that nowadays they just turn it into an anti-religion fest, and it would be like a propaganda kind of movie. So anyways, please like this video, comment, tell me what you thought of my top 10 old movies of 2022, and then please subscribe to this channel if you'd like to see more ranking videos. Goodbye, everybody. See you soon.